He made darkness his resting place. His pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds of the skies. 2 Samuel chapter 22, verse 12. We start with 6. John Douglas, my grandfather, Mary Dolores Douglas, grandma, Antoine Ivan Douglas, my uncle, Poncella Victoria Douglas, mom, Shante Vonzella Douglas, my aunt, and Robert Arthur Douglas, me. By the time I am born, we are down to 5. The Army veteran John Douglas weds grandma, her maiden name being Mary Blackwell. Shares the experience of birthing 3 children together and dies of alcoholism before I am born, unfortunately. Today, 1 remains. I am he who is yet to depart this earthly tabernacle. The rest of the clan is murdered in some form or fashion. It seems as if God systemically sanctions these murders in a detailed and explicit order, or at the least, allows it. I count it not happenstance that ancient humanity defined and placed meaning in the names given to their descendants. Unfortunately, the Douglas name is inescapable. Douglas is translated by the English of the 17th century and from Gaelic to mean dark waters, which explains a lot. This pool of dark waters that my tribe bathes in is what eventually strangles the life out of the individuals trapped within. I am convinced that my destiny will also end in the manners of this tragic generational curse of the Douglas lineage. In my 20 years, death has surely been no stranger, but when it approaches, God spares me for some reason. Thankfully, my siblings and cousins, the children of Shantae, escaped this kiss of death. My parents must consider sister honorable enough to carry my father's last name. My younger siblings, Angel and Binky, receive the last name of their father also, as do my little cousins. Coincidence? I think not. Thus I deem it safe to say that I'm the last samurai. The first execution I lived to experience is Uncle Antoine's, Antoine Ivan Douglas, translated from Latin, Hebrew, and Gaelic to mean a praiseworthy gift from God in dark waters. He is just that. This skyscraping thin JJ from Good Times wannabe with that exceptionally thick mustache keeps me on his hip and offers his wealth of things I needed from my father. He is the only father figure, or male for that matter, to own a place in my heart. Through example, he teaches me to be kind and gentle to others. He loves his only nephew. Uncle Antoine has no children of his own, so I'm the closest to a son for him. So he takes me everywhere with him and shows me everything. He praises me when I excel and corrects me when I am wrong, but talks grandma down from the beating she stands ready to give me. I want to be just like him. When I get older, I will attend the same prestigious high school as he, Baltimore City College High School. He credits the institute every time I ask him how he grew to be so smart. But the effects the dark waters have on him cause others to view him negatively. The drugs have very little hold on my uncle in comparison to the alcohol. He depends on it just to be able to function. Sadly, there's a thin line between functional and extreme intoxication, and he frequently flirts with that border. But his heart is purer than gold, and I hold a place in it that surmounts both the drugs and alcohol. Once when visiting grandma, she sends us both to the store for a BC and a Pepsi, our daily routine. Somehow ending up in the liquor store, a crucial addition to this routine, Uncle Antoine buys his drinks for the evening. I too want a drink, so I beg him for a V8. He runs out of money. His bag is filled with everything from the top shelf. The change from the money grandma gave him is all he has left. He compromises it for my drink, and when we return, grandma is convinced that Uncle Antoine bought drugs with her money. I offer my sworn testimony on his behalf, but she spanks me for lying for a junkie. That same night, I rise in my cartoon print briefs, tired. Uncle Antoine's not an angry drunk like every other drunk I know. He gets very depressed instead. I would rather him be angry. He sits at the table with his head in his hands. I confess to him, Uncle Antoine, I want you to stop drinking and smoking. Of course, I anticipate his response will be typical of a man of his particular stature. He will not only deny his problem, but yell and discipline me for not staying in the child's place, or blatantly disregard the concerns I show for him altogether. But shockingly, he weeps. His weeping lasts about an hour as he gapes at me in shame. He assumes I am too young and innocent to know how prevalent drugs are in his life. But drugs and alcohol are a major part of my own life indirectly. That night, he promises to leave them both alone. I believe in him, even though no one else does. To their surprise, he returns after a 1.5-year hiatus rehabilitated. He attended a facility called the Salvation Army and is employed and accompanied by his fiancée, Maria. He'd also rededicated his life to his personal savior, Jesus Christ, while away, and made certain to repay Grandma all he stole from her in the past. Maybe she believes him now about the night we were in the store. Everyone sees the change in him. It's admirable. It makes me feel valued to know that my words are enough to strike change in an individual. The adventures that lay ahead of us thrill me. His love is the closest I will ever get to feeling the love of a father. It's enough. But close soon grows far away because 2 short weeks after his return, Uncle Antoine is struck by a car and killed by the drunk driver. The irony sickens me. He credits his savior for his deliverance for what could have killed him eternally, yet it causes another person to do the job for him. The driver of the vehicle survives. This praiseworthy gift from God does everything in his power to escape the dark waters, but is knocked right back in to sink to his death by what he himself already conquered in his own life. The one man that I draw close to is now gone, leaving only the final 4 to remain. The curse strikes Mom, Poncella Victoria Douglas, with her first name having no meaning but middle translated from Latin, and last to mean a conqueror in dark waters. Next. Mom conquered many obstacles in her life. Her heart is gentle, but rough enough to cuss you out at the drop of a dime without a second thought thereafter. She possesses the ability to smile through anything, so she hides her pain well. Even bearing bruises and other wounds from time to time, she holds fast to her optimistic outlook on life. Her eyes can convince you of anything that parts her lips, so that none of her troubles are alarming to others. She isn't the transient type that has her mind set on some unsustainable goal all week. All she speaks of is her dream to be a chef, nothing more. She pursued it vigorously before the age of crack cocaine. Sadly, she couldn't conquer the dark waters in order to achieve it. The many emotions and complications wrapped up in her death limit the detail of this calamity. Although it is inconclusive whether she took the pill voluntarily or not, the prescription did indeed cause an asthma attack. However, she is not alone when she has the reaction. From what I discovered through eavesdropping, it isn't until she suffocates completely that her partner offers assistance in her final moments of distress. The man accompanying her sits and watches her die because of his own selfish desire not to have his high spoiled. Calling an ambulance could create legal issues for him, so he opts out. When she ceases to struggle, he throws Mom in the bed of his truck and drops her off at Grandma's, not the hospital. That same day, I received the greatest tribute to my mom that anyone could dig up to offer. Your mother was just starting to change. For the first time since Poncella was a child, I sent her to the store and she bought me back my exact change. I'm unsure how to feel about that. I yell and scream obscenities at God to tempt him to respond, and his reply is deafening. Utter silence. He not only forsakes me, but leaves me with only the triple threat for support. Afraid for whom the curse will strike next, I spend more time with Grandma and Shantae. One major discouragement to staying with them the entire weekend is that Grandma, Mary Dolores Douglas, bitter sorrows in dark waters from Hebrew, Latin, and Gaelic translations, forces me to go to church every Sunday. I dare not express my desire not to attend. The stern expression she wears on that constantly scrunched up light-skinned face induces enough fear in me not to voice my opinion if I don't want to find out the consequence. Grandma is old school. She whips me for the slightest reasons and wants to teach me the principles behind that whipping afterwards. Only one of them I understood enough to hold on to. 7 years old at the time, I sit in my pajamas sleeper, eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and watching The Price is Right with Grandma, her favorite show. All of a sudden, I make a, uh-oh. Robert, she snaps. My head automatically responds before my brain can command it to give her the eye contact she requires. Yes, ma'am. Did you go to the bathroom with yourself? No, I say in respectful disgust. I lied. I sit on my ankles to keep it from smashing to my bottom. I have to make an escape to the bathroom before she notices. Sit your butt right down, she demands, as the smell grows more potent and the last contestant on the show spins the wheel. She blurts out, Yes, you did. Get in that bathroom and get in the tub. I get up in shame because she knew the entire time. I do as I am told and wait patiently for her to run my water and wash me clean. It was an accident, Grandma, I thought to say in my most pitiful voice. I better not. I try crying, but I'm amused at the superheroes printed on my underwear having brown faces from the stains I left. She catches me snickering when she walks in. I choke on the last chuckle coming up as I swallow it back down. Grandma watches me in complete silence. She is either upset because I interrupted the end of her show, or because I disrespected her nose with the smell. Finally, she breaks that silence after the water in the tub runs out. It's gonna hurt me more than it hurts you, she says this all the time. Wailing on my wet, naked behind. That's for telling Grandma a lie, she speaks over the sound of the lashes. She leaves me in the tub rolling around, taking another bath in my tears. Grandma surely holds no punches, especially the ones headed toward my chest. I suffer my greatest embarrassments with her at church, which is another reason I do not wish to attend, next to my lack of interest. Once, just before evening service, as we all enjoy our chicken boxes, she tells a girl there who suffers from acne if she'll just wipe her face with a soiled diaper, she could clean that mess up. Gracefully paraphrased, of course. Needless to say, I continue to dread those services, until one day, I'm hired by the pastor to clean the pews when the crowd commences. The money becomes my sole motivation to attend. I surely have no desire to seek anything from a God that is so distant to me. In this state of servitude, though, I reap many advantages and ponder the thought that maybe God hasn't forgot about me after all. That thought vanishes when Grandma falls down the stairs and hurts her side. The emergency room physicians discharge her with only a prescription to kill the pain. The pain then kills her. That night, her appendix bursts inside her body. By the time she makes it back to the hospital, it's too late. She's alive, but not for long. There's nothing the physicians can do. I don't get a chance to see her before her passing because shortly after receiving the news, the curse silences her in her pain. The fall punctured her appendix and the doctors didn't take the necessary precautions or procedures because of her lack of insurance. Somehow the cost of medical attention is of greater value than what cost me my grandma. Of every human that embodies this earth, I loved her the most. She was so hard on me, on everyone. She would push me in every way imaginable, and though I didn't appreciate it, I miss it sincerely today. What I admire most about Grandma is the level of strength she possessed. In the loss of her first two children, she was still determined to serve her God who, she said, kept her. I thank her God for Grandma's sake that the curse struck her before it did Shantae or me. She wouldn't be able to bear it. I didn't want her to face more time in that mental facility like when Uncle Antoine and Mom died. As she yelped at the police, the paramedics strapped her reluctant body to a bed with wheels and took her away. I missed her while she was gone. Still, that experience didn't break her spirits or soften her personality. She made certain that while she resided on this side, she pushed me to greatness. She was very ineffective in verbal expression, so she tried not to talk much. She spoke through her pen instead and published her poetry. Those that were not lost, I hold on to dearly. With her gone, I left the New Lebanon church because money couldn't keep me pretending to be a true Christian. I sat in the front row every week to receive something from God and got nothing. Besides, without Grandma hollering, "Hallelujah!" from the fifth pew every Sunday, things seemed different. In no time, Grandma's old home turns into a stash house, and I find myself transporting drugs, drinking, and smoking when I come to visit. There's always something left in the fifths of liquor left on the kitchen table. When everyone goes to sleep, I take a sip or three. Yup. I can't understand how people drink this toxin and enjoy it. It burns my throat and chest. Guzzling this bottle the way I am could give me alcohol poisoning, but settles for knocking me out cold. The scraps of weed, consisting mostly of seeds and stems from bagging up, fill my blunts and gives me high enough after first catching contact from the smoke filling the air. If there isn't enough to fill my rolled up piece of notebook paper, I use some of the tobacco from the Dutch Master cigars they empty on the table before they out of the shell. As if my chest isn't already on fire, I take a puff and swallow the smoke. I have to finish my first blunt despite how lightheaded I am. My aunt knows none of this, Shantae Von Seller Douglas, with no meaning for her first or middle name, which could be the reason she suffered most. The house seems vacant on the weekends. I become a single father of 3 to my little cousins because Shantae works crazy hours. Her boyfriend and his acquaintances are too busy getting high and drunk, bagging up, or having sex to care what is going on with her child or me. The money from transporting drugs exceeds all the money I ever made combined. It's daunting, but the payoff surely comforts me. Once Shantae realizes my motive for visiting during the weekends, she bans me from babysitting and coming to visit altogether. I love Shantae even though we don't have much of an auntie-nephew relationship. She is much closer with sister. Shantae is always working, which is why I'm soon babysitting during the week too. As much as I wish we did have an in-depth bond, she cries too much for us to ever engage one another when she's home. But there's a mutual respect between us for the struggles we both face. It was my Uncle Antoine who was killed, but he was her brother. Her sister, Poncella, was my mother. Her mother, Mary, was my grandmother. It's as if we feared growing too close to one another to avoid the mental and emotional destruction one of us will face when the curse strikes again. So I understand why she forbids me from visiting, but I have other things on my mind. As I plot to sneak over and take a couple of packs up to Lorraine while she's out, the house is raided with me standing at the end of the block. Before I take off, I see my precious little cousins get carried out by those same blue uniformed devils that took me away from the house just 2 blocks away in Waverly. Miraculously, they return to Shantae's custody. The raids continue for some time though. It becomes an all too familiar part of their lives. Soon but not soon enough, Shantae grows tired of it and the traumatic effect it has on her children, and makes provision to move her family from that dead-end street and situation. With a new house aligned, Shantae decides to leave her boyfriend. When she tells him, according to the testimony of her oldest son Daquan, the two fight both verbally and physically. She walks to the phone booth to call the police when her boyfriend grabs his .357 Magnum from behind the back door and walks up the alley to meet her. Daquan runs up the street after his mother and sees her boyfriend shoot her on the corner of Greenmount Avenue and East 27th Street. He stays with his mother until the ambulance comes almost 30 minutes later. Shantae arrives at the hospital brain dead and fights for her life with the help of machines. She is so determined not to let the curse break her. It is when I see her in this vegetated state that she shows the greatest strength. The doctors say she can't hear us, but I know she can because every day I whisper in her ear, "Fight it," and she does. She knows the it I speak of. The family decides to take her off the machines that are her only weapons to fight, and she continues without them. For 10 minutes she brawls and battles, refusing to give in. I'm well pleased. In my eyes, the curse doesn't defeat her. She just grows tired of fighting it. Returning home, I pick up a gun for the first time. Unsure of whom to use it on, him or myself. I refrain from both options for my little cousins, specifically Daquan, who witnessed it all. He lived with his mom his entire life and watched her be murdered. That's much worse than hearing of the death of an estranged mother as I did. I can't imagine the pain he feels. I'm now left alone under the weight of the curse. Robert Arthur Douglas, bright fame, as strong as a bear in dark waters. Mom giving me her last name bursts me into this curse, yet giving me the first and middle names of my father declares me to be great, and hopefully strong enough to overpower these dark waters. I have indeed grown accustomed to the tactics of the force behind it, so I aim to curse this curse, break this curse, and destroy that which consumed my family. The fact that every suicidal and homicidal attempt has been unsuccessful is hell within itself. As of now, I have avoided it, but I feel dead without them. All of those surrounding me were taken so easily, and I, being the one who prayed that my life would end, remained. Even when I think God is taking too long, I attempt it myself, but I am saved by an all-time hero. And as much as I hate to admit it, something supernatural spares me from the 3 people who make unsuccessful attempts on my life too. I'm still standing. I'm still strong.